When it comes to investment properties, every single month you get rental income. So how do you calculate what is a good return and what isn't? So when it comes to rental properties or investment properties, what's the difference between those and residential properties where people buy to live in? Well, with rental properties, we need a rental profit, rental cash flow every single month. And if you watch one of my other videos, I talked about the number one criteria when it comes to investment properties is that it brings a healthy, positive cash flow every single month. So in today's video, I want to talk about investment returns. And before that, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure you do so now and turn on the notification button. So here we go. So when it comes to investment properties, every single month you get rental income. So how do you calculate what is a good return and what isn't? And one term that you're likely to come across is called yield. Yield. So what we're comparing is the amount of rental income that comes through the property each year in relation to the value of the property. So how much is this particular asset yielding per year and when it's expressed into a percentage, and that gives you the yield. So people might say, oh, is it 5% or 6%? And why is it important to know is because when you compare the yield from a rental property and the yield that you get from other investments, maybe in stocks and shares, then you decide where you're going to put your money. So when it comes to yield, the first thing we want to know is what is the rental income? Now, let's say, for example, there is a particular property that's bringing an income of, let's say, £500 or dollars per month. So in a year, it gives you 6,000. And if the value of this property happens to be 100,000, could be again pounds or dollars or euros, you multiply that by 100, that is going to give you the yield, which is 6%. So this particular property is yielding, bringing in 6 grand, and when expressed in a percentage in relation to the value of the property, it gives you 6%. Now, this is what the asset is yielding, but that doesn't mean what you're going to be getting as an investor. Because for most people, we probably won't be paying 100,000 in cash for a property. And instead, what we're likely to do is to get a mortgage, to get finance from the bank. So how is that going to be different if we're using a mortgage rather than cash? So now we can do a comparison. You've got 100 grand. Should you just stick it in the property and buy it, or should you actually get a bank loan? Now, let's say in this case, the property is, the market value is, again, 100,000. But this time, you're getting a mortgage from the bank. I'll use a different color, mortgage. And the bank will probably never give you the full amount. So what they're likely to give you is a percentage, which is known as LTV, or loan to value. So different mortgage products will have different loan to values. And typically, it could be 75% or 80% or even 90% for some residential properties. But let's work on a nice round number of 80%. So that means the mortgage is going to be 80,000. And the deposit of your own money that you put into the deal is 20,000. So now, instead of putting in the 400,000, you're only putting in 20,000. What we need to do next is to find out about the rental income. How is that going to change? Because now every single month you have to pay interest on the mortgage of £80,000 or dollars. So, for example, if the mortgage is charging you 4% a year, so 4% mortgage is going to be 80,000 multiplied by 4%. That means the interest per month or per year is 80,000 times 4%, which is 3,200. Now, remember from the previous example, the rental income is 500 each month or 6,000 in a year. So now we have to subtract the interest from the rental income. Now, the one thing that I haven't actually done is to work out the repayment of the principal amount of 80,000 per month, because the calculation could get a little bit more complicated. But because we're comparing the cases like for like, and we keep it consistent throughout, we can just leave out the principal repayment on this loan. So now the net income will be 6,000 minus 3,200 equals 2,800. So now this is the net income. Of course, we haven't taken into consideration all the other expenses like, maintenance and so on. Again, I just want to keep it very, very simple. Now let's see how the yield calculation is going to change. So now the yield is now going to be 2,800, which is the 6,000 minus the 3,200, which is less, but now you divide it by 20,000. You multiply by 100. So this is the net income and this is the initial outlay. So now what is the yield? Let's work it out. 2,800 times by 100 divided by 20,000 equals 14%. So now you can see by getting a mortgage, your yield actually has gone from 6%, which is here. Let me just circle it. 6% to a whopping 14%. So would you rather get 6% or 14%? Of course, you prefer the higher yield. So what does that teach you? What it teaches is that the less of your own money that you put into the deal, the higher the return on your investment or the higher the yield. So that brings you to this concept in property that we, as much as possible, we want to use OPM. That stands for other people's money. So even if you've got money, you've got cash, it's much better when you leverage on other people's money. So that way you could get a much higher return. In this case, it's 14%. Now let me just take you to another scenario, because we know that house prices actually will go up in value over time. And now let's say after 5 years, the property now is worth 150,000 rather than 100. So it's gone up by 50% because of inflation, right? So the original mortgage, remember, we took out was 80%, which is the mortgage is still 80,000 because we did say that we're going to stick to an interest-only mortgage. So the mortgage balance hasn't really gone down because we've been paying the interest, but now the value has gone up to 150,000. So now, here's the thing. You can either sell the property for 150,000, pay off the mortgage of 80,000, you're still left with 70,000 pounds or dollars, and you can use this money to buy another property and repeat the process. Or one thing you can do is to refinance. Every time the value of the property goes up, you can actually go to the bank and get a new bank loan. So the new mortgage or remortgage or refinance at 80% loan to value. So now this time the bank is going to loan you 80% of 150, which is 120,000. Right? 120. This is your new mortgage. So now when this subtracts your original mortgage of 80,000, what you're left with is 40,000. So this is your cash back, right? So now you can refinance and get a new loan and you get 40,000. That includes the original 20,000 that you put in. So you don't have to actually sell the property. And now you can use this money to buy another property. Now, when you've actually got back the 20,000, that means you have none of your own money in the deal. Is what we call no money in deal. It's no money in. So now what is your yield when you've actually refinanced and get back all your money? Well, so we can do the same calculation. The mortgage interest on the 120,000. So let's say the mortgage is still 4% of 120,000 equals, so 120,000 times 4% is 4,800. This is the interest of the 120,000 loan. Now, what is the net income? Well, originally the income from the rental was 6,000, but 5 years have passed and the property value has actually gone up by 50%. So could it be likely that the rental could also have gone up by 50%? And the answer is yes. So 50% increase of 6,000 is 9,000. So now let's say the rent is 9,000. So now the net income equals 9,000 minus 4,800, which is 4,200. So now this is the net income. So how are you going to calculate the yield? So what is the yield? The yield equals the net income of 4,200, but this time you haven't got any more money in the deal. Zero. You in fact got back 40,000. That includes the original 20,000 with extra 20 grand, and you multiply by 100. So what is the answer? When you divide 4,200 by 0, what answer you going to get? The answer is something called infinity. Infinite return on your investment. What it's telling you is that when you refinance the deal and you get back every single penny that you put into the property, but it's also giving you a positive income, this represents infinite return on your investment. The calculator can't even work it out because it's infinite, it's too big. So it completely breaks down the whole idea of yield and percentages. So it's not 4%, 8%, or 10%, it's infinitely big. And that means it's huge. So what this is telling you is that whenever possible, you want to refinance and get back as much of the original amount that you put in as possible and leave no money in the deal. Any rental income that you get from this is going to be infinite return. And that means this property has cost you no money, it's giving you rental income. And one more thing is that this property is also going to have capital appreciation. It will go up in value in 3, 5, 7, or 10 years time. So that means based on the yield, what we learned, number one is whenever possible, use other people's money, use a bank loan. And secondly is to refinance as quickly as possible. Now, the only problem with this is that it's going to take some time. It's going to take a few years for the value to go above the original purchase price. And so people do it, and many people do very successfully. Every few years they refinance and buy a new property, and then it's a very good retirement strategy. But for me, I would rather do it quickly. So how can you make sure that the value of the property goes up much more quickly within a short space of time? What do you think is the one thing that you can do with property that is not available in other investments? You got it. It's renovation, refurbishment. So instead of buying a brand new property, it's much better for you to find a property that needs work. So if you find property that needs work and you do some work to it, it will increase in value much more quickly within a short space of time, and that way you can refinance. So there are a lot of people who do renovation projects with a view that they either can sell it after the work is done, or they can refinance and then they can repeat the process. So that's a very, very good portfolio building strategy. But there's also one more thing you can do to make sure the value of the property is vastly different from the price, is when you know how to buy a property at below the market value. Yes, I'm talking about getting discount properties, finding bargains, or also known as BMV. BMV stands for below the market value. So how is it possible that a property worth 120,000 you can buy for 100,000? How is it possible that you can have a deal that makes you money the moment you buy? And that I will explain in one of the later videos. So for now, just remember, use none of your own money or little or none of your own money, and recycle your money by refinancing. So that's all for today, and I hope you have really enjoyed this, and make sure you click the subscribe button and turn on the notification. I'll see you in the next video.